Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very privileged to have Mr. Patrick Bristow here. I told my kids that he was coming on today, and they were all excited because they saw him on a little show called The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Yep.
I think I remember you from Austin Powers.
Yeah, I had a little cameo in that a little bit. I was the tour guide at the VirtueCon headquarters.
You've done some voiceover acting as well, right?
A little bit of animation voiceover, yeah. King of the Hill, some early Family Guys.
How did you get into this business?
Well, I think I was always attracted to it, even as a kid. My parents had been stage actors in Los Angeles in the late 40s. Okay. And so, the photo albums were, filled with their curtain call photos and their headshots and stuff. So I was very attracted to it, did school plays and that kind of thing. By high school, I focused on the clarinet, of all things. That was what I thought my profession was going to be. And I studied with a local, very good teacher. And my dad got me a quality instrument and I was really all about it. But then senior year, I did a part in the musical, the spring musical at my high school. And that kind of the bug kind of rebit me then. And so I changed my major that summer, going into college, to theater. My parents had kept me out of anything professional as a kid. I grew up in LA. So, I went to school with kids that were pros that you'd see on commercials, or even Christy McNichol in my middle school. But when we were approached, by agents, because I was, a red-haired kid, and that was the big thing in the 70s. I wanted to do it, but my parents were like, no, we're not putting you into that yet. And I'm glad they didn't. I wouldn't have been probably up to all the stresses and the pressures and the mind games that, this business has as part of it. As a kid, I was barely up to it in my 20s. I'm barely up to it now. But college theater and then doing little plays here and there, and thinking I wanted to be a musical theater person, studying voice, and then thinking I wanted to be an opera singer and studying classical voice. And, somewhere around my mid-20s, I discovered that I really, really loved doing improv. And there weren't as many schools around as there are now. Like, you throw a rock in any city and there's an improv school. But back in the day in LA, there were just a couple, and the Groundlings was known as the one to go to. So I auditioned there, and again, bit by that specific bug. And I just basically devoted the next, 4 to 7 years of my life to improv and sketch. And that led to getting seen by casting directors, who then brought me into audition for small parts in TV and film. And, one thing led to another. Are people that have kind of one winning persona that they use throughout all their improv work, and it works great for them, And there are some people that like to be chameleons and just change their body, their voice, their mind, their emotions, their soul, for every chance they get. And there's different types of improvisers, So just because you think that you might have one go-to characterization, that shouldn't preclude you from pursuing it if you want.
Well, so is that kind of how you perceive yourself, as a chameleon, able to change that character up all the time, or you kind of have a certain style that you go with?
At the Groundlings, I really enjoyed mixing it up. I really enjoyed the possibilities of just changing everything. I was a really gawky, ginger, skinny, gay guy. And so the chance to play something outside of that was really liberating. Improv was the only place that I was going to be able to play, the well-built Studley stable boy who the lady of the house is interested in. It was the only place I was going to do that. And so I had fun with the liberation of playing characters that I would never get cast in. But in my professional life, they tend to kind of pigeonhole you, and I don't think of that as a bad thing. I have like a couple different colors that I play. There's kind of bitchy and acerbic. There's very enthusiastic and a little oblivious.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this kind of academic and dry. And those are kind of the three colors I typically get cast in.
What's been the most challenging role for you?
Well, the most challenging actually in recent memory would be an episode of Criminal Minds I did where I played the long lost son of Frances Fisher, which is kind of weird because I don't think she's much older than me. But he was described as having autism or being on the Asperger's spectrum. And I have a nephew who is autistic. And I got the part and I had prepared for the audition. But I had to double down when I got the part and had like about a week to really prepare it because I didn't want to make cliche mistakes. You know, I didn't want to be an exhibit A and like, here's not what not to do when playing a character with autism. So that was probably the most challenging and the most different. And yet it's not that different. I mean, I'm using my own voice. I'm using, you know, my own face. We didn't Lon Chaney me up into another person or something like that. I'm not a brunette. But yeah, that was probably the biggest departure I've had in a long time. And it came with a real sense of responsibility. And, you know, I got some good feedback, but who knows how that performance will age.
But what do you have going on now?
Right now is kind of a quiet period, but I'm loving it. Just staying at home. I did an NCIS in December that will probably air sometime, maybe late February, March. That was fun. And I've got a project with the Jim Henson Company for the last 15 years called Puppet Up Uncensored. And it's a live improv puppet variety show, basically. We do improvised sketches. We do some choreographed and set pieces. Musical stuff, and I'm the director and host of that. So we just came off a very intense 6 weeks at Knott's Scary Farm during the Halloween season.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're their resident act in the big theater there. And we do 3 shows a night, 4 nights a week, so 12 shows a week. They're only 35 to 40-minute shows, but they're exhausting and so much fun. And I have a rotating cast of puppeteer improvisers who come and go through that month. So there's a lot of offstage work and onstage work to do for that job. And then, of course, the morning show, I did that last year, and that season has been airing and just got some really nice nominations. And that was a lot of fun to, you know, play stuff closer to the best, not the broader comedy that I'm known for. And that has gotten increasingly less attractive to me as I've gotten older. It takes so much energy and everything like that. I kind of like actually being able to relax into, you know, a character as opposed to having to amp up for it. When I auditioned for it, they sent me the audition with a fake name for the show.
Really?
Yeah, so I think so they can keep leaks from getting out, right?
Yeah.
So I was auditioning for this show. I didn't know what it was. I taped the audition here at home, sent it via email, forgot about it, and then got it. And it was, you know, potentially recurring. And when they reached out, it was the morning show. And I was like, oh, I heard of this. Then I watched it and then I went, holy wow. I've got to step it up here. And I got to do 4 episodes in the second season. They are coming back for a 3rd season. I don't know that my character will. I don't think there's a place for him. But if it does, that would be fantastic. If it doesn't, it was a great ride. But really fun to work with actors of that caliber and directors of that caliber and writing of that caliber. Just a really great experience.
What is it like preparing for an audition, doing a video at home? How's that process work?
You know, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but I do really like doing them from home. There are challenges, technical challenges, obviously. You know, I don't do them with this background. It's too distracting. So, you know, I've painted certain walls, certain colors, and I take the pictures off them. you know, or we have one, long window, and I get all the curtains divided just nice and evenly as a background. You know, bringing lamps in and stuff like that, to make it look right. So there's the challenges of that, getting someone to read with you, which in my case is usually my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll do it. He's very good at it, but he doesn't particularly like to do it. The advantages are you send in what you feel is a representative take. Whereas if you go in the room, sometimes you have one shot at it. And if you fumble a little bit, or your nerves maybe kept some of the color out of the performance, or your nerves made you go a little too fast for the character, you may or may not get a chance to do it again. Sometimes they'll say, yeah, let's do it again and try this. You get a redirect, which is, always wonderful, but casting directors do not always have that time. And sometimes they or the producers just, they've seen what they've seen. You're not the guy. Thank you. Whereas this, I can, I can do 4 or 5 takes, choose the one that feels right, and put it out and feel good about that. So there's not that drive home going, oh,
Well, the reason why I wondered, because you have a director there that might say, hey, I want to see you do it this way. I mean, I guess they give you instructions when they send you the casting call, but
yeah, you're given some, description of the character, sometimes a reminder of what the tone is of the project, if it's an established show. If it is an established show, you can go on YouTube and, see some examples and go, I see what the tone is. That can be very helpful. When it's a project where you don't have any reference, you're guessing based on the writing, based on who's in it, based on the director, based on, just your gut instincts. And you don't necessarily get that redirect from a director or a producer to help get you closer to what they want. So again, it's, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah, everything's got its ups and downs.
But I like the fact that I can audition without wearing pants and it doesn't disturb anyone. My husband.
So back to the puppet show.
Back to the puppet show.
Back to the puppet show.
He started talking about himself not wearing pants. Back to the puppet show.
That's a typical Zoom meeting, from what I understand. Is that like a child's type of show, or is it an adult?
Oh, it's an adult show.
So it must get pretty raunchy then.
Sometimes, our guiding principle is that we don't endeavor to be raunchy, because that would make the whole thing just kind of cheap.
Yeah.
But we allow it in as intelligent a way as we can pull it off when the audience clearly wants to see something in a scene. I say, like, these two characters are breaking up. Why? And they give me maybe an adult reason for that breakup. We will endeavor to do it in a way that, doesn't go into X, but is definitely, what's that other rating? NC-17. And we really try to mete out the F-bombs, the language, the gratuitous stuff. It gets old very fast. So the audience might think they really want to see that, but we're going to give them our smartest version of it. And at the end of the day, they do seem to appreciate that extra effort. But no, our show is not recommended for kids. And sometimes we've done it in places where they will absolutely not let anyone under 16 in, because of that particular venue's rules. So yeah, it's interesting. It started as just a class that I taught at the Jim Henson Company. Brian Henson, Jim's son, brought me in to teach improv to the puppeteers, just so they'd have that skill set in their quiver.
Right.
And they took to it very well, and we were having so much fun doing it. And it got a little bit blue at times and a little bit dark and subversive. And that was really fun. When you see, a bunch of cute puppets that are robbing a bank and taking people hostage and being badasses, it's kind of funny. It's funnier than in real life, because that's not a funny situation. But puppets get away with murder, literally. And Brian said that, when the cameras weren't rolling, his dad and Frank Oz and all those people, they ad-libbed a lot. And a lot of it was not what people would associate with Jim Henson, because they immediately think of, the Muppet Show, family friendly, though subversive, or Sesame Street, family friendly, kid friendly.
Yes.
But that's not the core of what was Jim's sensibility and sense of humor. His core was puppets behaving badly, violence. In fact, the first title of the Muppet Show when he pitched it was Sex and Violence with the Muppets.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yep. And, it turned into what it turned into. And it was only in England that, a network got behind it before it got distribution statewide, as I understand it. But that subversive, violent, naughty kind of teasing humor is very evident in some of Jim's early work. And his wife, Jane Henson, who, is kind of an unsung hero. She was a huge part of all of the Henson efforts. She brought a wicked sense of humor in as well. And I was glad that I got to meet her before she passed, and that she saw our show and she gave it her blessing, because, that was very important to get. And she had ideas for it, and was a big fan of it. So anyway, that's how the show started. It started as a class, then we did a little demonstration, some festivals saw it, they brought us in, and it just evolved very organically and naturally into a show. In our show, we have a couple very nostalgic pieces. One is Java, the piece with the two dancing tubes that Frank Oz created. And the other one is I've Grown Accustomed to Your Face, which Jim Henson created and performed with Jane Henson. And that originally had Kermit in a wig with pearls and this weird demon head that is trying to eat him as he's singing, or lip syncing rather, to I've Grown Accustomed to Your Face by Rosemary Clooney. And we recreated those pieces for our puppet show, Puppet Up Uncensored. And I've seen them hundreds of times now, with different puppeteers playing the parts. Everyone from Brian Henson himself to brand new puppeteers who are only, 23 years old. And every time that music starts and the lights fade up on the piece, I don't know, I just get this kind of warm heart chakra, not to get too Eastern here, sense of connection to those pieces that hadn't been seen by live audiences for decades until we brought them back. So yeah, there's a certain sentiment around some of the puppets that many of which are very old and have been refurbished so many times. There's probably barely a thread left of the original puppet that were on TV shows and pilots and things from the 70s. And so, you take one of those puppets and you see the old label in it that says Jim Henson Company, and it's the label is faded and stained and has been sewn in and out so many times, and it has the original name written in Sharpie of what that character was. There's a definite nostalgic connection to the early years of this world that I have been just very lucky, very blessed to be a small part of. Most of the time when I left a show, we didn't know we were leaving. You just get canceled. Last days, I think it's been a while since I had one where I knew it was like a last day. Mm-hmm. So it'd be interesting if that happens again to see, how I feel. No. Usually I've been pretty businesslike about it. There have been a few projects where there was a speech backstage before the thing, and the cast thanked me or something like that, where I got moved and actually cried, which proved to them I wasn't a witch, which is very distressing because I like them to think I'm a witch. But once I cried, then they know I'm not a witch. So, so yeah, it's happened, but I haven't had much cause recently. So it'll be interesting to see if the waterworks flow and I get all choked up and verklempt next time it's a last day of school kind of situation. And some casts and some classes and some groups are just a little extra special. They just really are. And oddly, I haven't been in touch with some people from some of those experiences.
Oh.
You know, it was a moment in time. You know, we did a play. It ran for 4 months. It was your family during that time, and I've kept in touch through Facebook. Thank God for that. But will we actually see each other in person again? I don't know. Especially, you know, less in the last couple of years. But but it was a moment in time.
Has there been any obstacles that you had to overcome to get where you are?
Sure. Some of them are the garden variety ones, and some are specific, I think, to me. I try to counsel my students, especially my younger students, or the ones who've been at it a while and haven't really met with success. I say, you know, it's a different path for everyone. And I'll tell them about people I was at the Groundlings with who were brilliant, and whose time didn't come until a little bit later in life. They had to grow into how they sounded, how they looked, and they had to grow into the fashion of what was being cast. Because make no mistake, TV and film, and probably to a degree playwriting, is the characters are created in a fashion.
Yeah.
And for a period of time, for female lead characters to have a gay male assistant or secretary was the fashion. For a period of time after Revenge of the Nerds, to have, you know, kind of scrawny, you know, nerdy looking guys in your commercial was the fashion. And I fit the bill at that time. I also didn't fit the bill when I was trying to do musical theater, and, you know, I didn't blend in very well because, again, I had this effulgent, radioactive, bright red hair. And occasionally somebody would cast me in spite of it. And I'd either be wigged or I'd have to put a rinse in, or occasionally it worked. And, you know, but it was, so a challenge was I couldn't look like everybody's brother or son.
Right.
I didn't fit into a lot of family casting. In fact, in my entire career, I've rarely played a family member. I've almost always been in a professional environment in all these years. I hardly ever play a brother, a son, or a dad, or even an uncle or a cousin. So, you know, that was one of the things where I had to kind of realize, all right, slow your roll here, Bristow. Be patient. You don't exactly fit the mold today, but you did a while back, and maybe as you get older, you'll fit a different mold. And that is kind of what's happened in the last few years. I find myself going in for more academics and more, just almost like executives, judges, and the like, as my coloring, my age, my face, everything has changed. So obstacles, yeah. And then also, you know, there were obstacles I put in front of myself, like playing straight characters that were involved with female characters in the text. Sometimes I'd be like, I don't know that I can pull this off. And in some cases I could, but then once I was established, it's like, well, who's going to believe it if I don't? And so it depends on the script, but there are some obstacles that, like, yeah, I'll just get in my own head and think like, I don't think I can do this. And so that's an obstacle. Yeah, you know, obstacles are part of pursuing a creative commercial career. By commercial, I don't mean commercials. I mean, you know, just business.
Right.
You are a puzzle piece. You have a certain pattern and a color and a shape.
True.
And either you fit exactly what they're looking for, or they're willing to change the shapes around you to make you fit. So every opportunity isn't yours. So every loss isn't a tragedy. Every time you don't get the role, it's not another chip away at your ego, or it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So the inner game is something that I had to learn to play early. Lord had to learn to play honestly. with myself, not bullshit myself. And it's what I try to gift my students, with.
Right.
So that they have, hope, but some realistic, ideas of the path ahead of them.
If you had some advice to give someone trying to be successful, what would you
Sure.
tell them?
I would tell them that I think what I learned a little bit early, and I continued to learn repeatedly, is you are your instrument, no matter what it is that you're pursuing, whether it's violin, acting, being a doctor. You are your instrument, and you have to learn your instrument that did not come with an owner's manual.
Right.
And the more honest you can be with yourself about every single process that goes through your emotions and your mind as you're striving to learn, as you're actually doing the work, is important. You have to know what voice inside your head maybe needs to be quieted and sent for a timeout in the corner, put in a straitjacket, and which voice in your head to listen to and when, because the one that you straitjacket at the moment might be the one you need to listen to tomorrow. But negativity, outward comparisons, unhealthy competition, unhealthy self-talk, and unhealthy expectations will ruin what can be very joyous. And, I didn't become a star, which I think I wanted to be when I was 18 or 19. And I'm glad of it. I'm glad I didn't. I sure would love that bank account that some of them have, but no, the 18 or 19-year-old me that wanted something really badly wasn't my best self. He was the best I could do at that age. So I've learned to change expectations, to not cry foul when something doesn't work out in my favor, to yes and, which is a big thing in improv, to accept the reality in front of you and move forward by adding to it, by building upon it. That's the and of yes and, right? I accept this as reality in front of me, and I have a responsibility to link to it and to further it. That's the way now that, I try to live my life. And if the reality is something I don't like, then it's like, well, can I change it? Can I get around it? Can I incorporate it? Can I have to accept that it's there, that I didn't get that job, or I didn't turn out to be this. And now the ball is in my court on how I'm going to proceed. And by continually remembering that, I never feel like, at the whims of an uncaring universe. I'm really aware when something wonderful happens, that how lucky am I? And when something doesn't, maybe I dodged a bullet. There was a movie that I really wanted to be in years ago, and I auditioned. I had like 7 auditions for it. I've never had that many auditions for a part. And the movie was called The Frighteners, and it was directed by Peter Jackson. Yes. Before he was really big. But I knew his work, and I really wanted to be in it. And another guy got the part ultimately, and he was great in it. He was just perfect for it. But I wanted that part. I worked really hard at every single audition. My last audition, Michael J. Fox was in the room, and he was very sweet. But I had just come off of an 18 to 19-hour day working on Showgirls that went into the morning. So I basically threw cold water on my face. My husband drove me because I was no condition to drive, and I went to that last audition, and it wasn't good, and I didn't get it. And I felt really bad about that. A week later, my dad got really sick and was in the hospital. No, it wasn't a week later. I'm sorry. About a month later, when they were shooting the film in New Zealand, my dad got really sick and was in the hospital. And I was doing a pilot in LA. So because of the TV schedule, I was able to drive back and forth between the desert where my parents lived and where I had to shoot this friggin' pilot. But my dad ultimately passed away a week later or 10 days later. And I thought, man, if I had gotten that film, I would have been stuck in New Zealand. They wouldn't have been able to change the shooting schedule for me to get home, probably.
Right.
I wouldn't have been able to have been home for all that time to support my mom, to be present during that time where I needed to be where I needed to be. I ended up getting another job, which was helpful because that's how we make insurance in our union, by working.
Right.
And that was the pilot that I coincidentally had to shoot the day my dad actually passed. But the minute I was done, I was able to drive home. But had the me that wanted that part so bad through those 7 auditions and felt so bad after that 7th or 8th one, that exhausted morning in the room with Michael J. Fox, had I gotten it, it would have been a very different and not very good story. So when things elude me now, I don't know what the bullet is that I've dodged. Yeah. And I don't grieve over it, because I don't know what the future holds, what I should do, what I shouldn't do. I'll just yes and what is coming.
I appreciate you coming on and giving me your time today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. This has just been fun.
I love having these conversations.
Yeah, well, you're good at them too. I'm gonna start watching your other podcast now. We got a new fan.
Again, thank you for your time, and for those of you that are watching or listening to us, if you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. I hope you'll come back, and please subscribe if you're regular. Thank you for your support. Share this out. Till the next one, everyone, please take care. Please be kind to each other. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network